Hi there, this is Popo, I hope you'll fine. Welcome back to the Matches Miniature series, where we cover some matches game that happen in real life on real board against real people, actually the friends of a chess club. So the game I'm going to show you is not a game that happened recently or lately. This is a game that happened approximately in the middle of our matches quest, and this is the famous guy which won with the centaurs and the dragons, which asked me, actually Popo, what is your favorite faction, the faction that you like the most to play with? And I answered the vampire, and then I told him about the tournament we held on the matches Discord when I got third place thanks to the vampires, and I was saying that the vampires were quite strong. So he was very interested because at that time I didn't show them the vampires, so he wanted to learn how to play the vampires. So the game I'm going to show is the first game that we actually play vampires against the humans, and I was saying, okay, you play with the vampires, let's see what you got. And he said, no, please play with the vampires, I'll play the humans, I want to get completely destroyed by you, and then I'll understand how strong the vampires can be. So the game I'm going to show is that I play with the vampires as white, and my opponent plays as the humans as black. You see that a lot of games I'm going to show is always the faction someone's going to play as white, and then against the humans as black. This always has this kind of setting that we begin our games. Okay, so let's show the game. You see that I'm not going to be too much aggressive at the beginning of the game, just to show him how I can control the board, because at the same time I was commenting for my friend, you see here with the wolf I can control that, with the banshee I can control that, and then he was very careful on the board. So let's show you this game because this is actually kind of interesting. d4, e6, e4, knight to f6, and actually c3. You might say that this pawn, this ghoul is hanging and the knight can take it. Not really, because thanks to the blood jump, this wolf can capture this ghoul and then be able to recapture right after on e4. So we have to be very careful to that, and actually my opponent wanted so bad to take on e4, say, no, don't take on e4, like this is a trap. So he just played h6 then, he wanted to be sure that the banshee would never pin this knight. So we have a banshee to d3 trying to get space, and now I can control these things. We have knight to c6, a ghoul to f4, taking even more the space, because now I can take it and get those squares. Then we have knight back to e7 for, I don't know, maybe he wanted to strike on d5, I guess, but instead I have a count to f3, so maybe he wasn't convinced after all, I don't know. We have pawn to d6, very shy. Wolf to e2, trying to control a little more square, because after I can jump I can control other things here. Bishop to d7 and castle. Then comes bishop to c6, trying to line up. And here I've just played banshee to e3, and this is at move 9 that we begin the fight. And I actually really like the position we have. Just see how gorgeous it is for the vampires. I literally have access to a lot of squares. Let's begin by this wolf. This wolf can decide to capture here and land on this square, this square, this square, and also can decide to capture here, can capture here, can capture here, can capture here, and can capture here. Okay, this wolf can do the same. Excuse me, can I undraw this arrow? Yeah, and take the same way. But it can also jump here, and now it has access to this square, this square, this square, this square, this square, and this square. But it can also jump to this, and then it has access to this square, this square, this square, this square, and this square. But that's not over, because this banshee can decide to take here and then have access to this square also, and take here and have access to this square. And finally this banshee can take and then I'll have access to this square, this square, this square, and this square. Do you see the amount of squares I'm just controlling at that moment? That's just hella crazy. And then I didn't have all the time to show all the squares I was controlling, but my opponent felt like something was going to happen. So at some point maybe he wanted to trade. So he tried the very nice knight to f5. Here I can't really capture this knight this way, else I would be captured. But at the same time I wanted to have an access over this bishop. So even I could use the blood jump here to get this knight, get the trade. I couldn't take back then, because I would still be captured. So this is why I decided to use my banshee to take the pawn, and then thanks to the power of my banshee I can take now this knight. So pawn recaptures, and of course you wouldn't capture with this, so I decided to recapture back with the count on f5, and now I'm better. And at some point I really want so bad to get this wolf here and get a trade. I would weaken the structure and I would be able to go in. But my opponent played very well the thing. He played queen to c8. He thought that the count was a very powerful queen, so he wanted to get a trade. And actually this is a good way to do, I guess, because I think he wanted to castle queenside at some point. Oh, maybe he couldn't because the move would have moved. Rook would have moved to defend the queen. So maybe here castle kingside and then put the rook there and get some activity. I don't know. I feel like he was already lost at some point. He has this kind of idea. I guess as this is his first game, he wasn't really aware of the fact that he would win. So I decided to back up with count to f3 then, and we have bishop to d7 with the idea I wouldn't be able to capture on c6. That's pretty cleverly played. But instead I decided to play wolf to d2, and wolf to d2 here is now taking this pawn and attacking. And this is something very thematic in the vampires. You have this kind of structure, and then you have two wolves here on d and e2. And just let's take a look of all the squares you can control. With this wolf you can jump here, you can get to access to these squares. I'm going to take my time, I'm very sorry, but this is important to show. And I can also attack there and have access to those squares. That were the same square I had before, I have to say. Here, here, and here. But now I can use this wolf to jump here, and now I would access to dark squares. And that would mean you now, because I would have access to these squares. Let me calculate well to be sure I wouldn't do any mistake. And yeah, I can decide to back up, even this is stupid. Yeah, I would have access to all of these squares, and remember that the bench is still here. So now, paradoxically, one piece is off the board, but I guess I get a better access to the wolf field, because my wolves are very well placed. So with this wolf to d2 thing, I want to trade the knight so bad. So of course he saw that, and then he played bishop to e7 to be sure that he wouldn't break the structure then. So I decided to go with wolf to f4, and maybe at some point put some pressure here with the wolf going to h5 or the wolf going to d5. And then he decided to play pawn to g5. And actually I could have gone for this, but there's some even clever way to go, is just to back off on e2, and now you have a double attack here and here. And how are you gonna defend this? Like, there's no way. You have to back up your knight, and the knight has no good way. He has to go here or go here, and yeah, not good for him. So I guess maybe he didn't see that, so he decided to castle. And here, of course, this is completely losing, because I can just use my wolf to take on f6, and after bishop captures, I can decide to capture, but count to f4 is played. Let me see just a move before. If I decide to capture here, yeah, I'm up material, of course, but I have to replace myself, because my count would be on the battlefield, and then it takes ages to replace and then threat checkmate. Here, I prefer immediately to go for count to e4 to go for checkmate, because at that point, how am I gonna defend this? I say, you put the bishop here, yeah, of course. But now I use my wolf blood jump and then I take. And then I threat to take there with check, and even if you go here, I would go check, takes, checkmate. That's not that easy to defend. And even if you want to go the wall line, okay, I can just blood jump. You go here, you sacrifice your queen, and then I'll take a ghoul. Okay, but I'm still completely winning. He would just take one move before I would just push here on e5, and then I'll put my ghoul into the game, and you don't have a lot of ways to defend. So here my opponent thinks that, okay, something is smelling very bad, so he decided to play rook to e8. Rook to e8 is not that stupid. At the first, he would just kick this count, and maybe get controlled, and also it gives a breathing point for the king. But this is not that simple to defend, because after a count to h7 check, king to f8 is forced. Then we have count to h6 check, and you see that taking the nearby pawn creates a ghoul, and now this ghoul controls this square. So here, king to e7 is forced. And you say, okay, this king is really safe, maybe you'll try to go on e8. No. I didn't take my opponent a single time, because now Tom to f3 is on the board. And now with Tom to f3, this comes on the board. Like, how are you gonna defend this? That's going to be very complicated. For example, I don't know, if you put the bishop to f5, I'm going to capture it. And then the only way you defend is to capture with the queen. And even if you capture with the queen, okay, what are you gonna do? That will be very complicated for you. And I can even do something worse. I can even capture with the knight. Wolf captures, and this is check. And if you want to save your bishop, you have to play the king to e6. Then wolf to g7 would be played. And here the rook is just full. You want to defend another time? Okay, I'm going to play this. Takes, banshee to f6. And your king has no breathing square. He can try to push here, but I would try to be very early, and at some point I'll try to get rid of this bishop. I still have a tomb left. So yeah, the position is completely losing. So after the tomb to f3, my opponent tried something very bold. He decided to put the bishop on h8. And this can be understandable by the fact that I'm threatening to capture this bishop. And even if the king would have a breathing square by putting the bishop away, maybe he wants to save this bishop first and be sure that this would never promote. So that's a pretty safe move. The only problem is that I can still take on g5, and this is check. And now you have to be very careful, because at some point, where do you move? For example, if you decide to put this king here on e6, then I'm going to play the wolf to f4, and this is checkmate. So you can't. You can decide to push this pawn then. But pushing this pawn, I guess, is also a mistake, because I have some way to win. Let me just see. I didn't cover this line, but I'm sure there's a way to win. I guess I can just take with the tomb and try to discover check. And you can't really take with the bishop, else I'm going to take with the conde. And by taking nearby pieces, I would have a ghoul that protects that. So you have to be careful against what to do. So yeah, that's pretty complicated to deal with it. So I would be able to slide the tomb and go for a very beautiful checkmate. I can even slide it up when like it was, and after this falls, I can go here. I can have some nasty tricks. So here in the game, my opponent decided to put the king back on f8, and here this is where I went with a very nice line. I got count to g8 check and king to e7, and here this is basically mate in 2. So feel free to pause the video and find the correct answer for the vampires to win the game while I give you a couple of seconds. Okay, I hope you all got this. The answer was to take the bishop where the count, but not to promote the ghoul that creates to a tomb, but to a wolf. The only problem being is that on this match's computer, for any reason, when you decide to take a piece on the back rank with the count, it automatically creates a tomb. And I guess this is a mistake, and maybe this game is to convince the developer that you have to modify this setting to allow knight promotion, because let me see how beautiful it is. Let's suppose that you create a wolf. This is check to the king. Another question is that where do you put the king? You have 3 ways. You can put here, you can put it here, you can put it here. Let's cover each of the moves. If you put the king here, I'm going to put the conde here, and this is check. You have only one way to defend, is to put the rook here, and then I'm going to take, and this is checkmate. I'm supporting by the knight. Okay. If you decide to move back here, this is even worse, because I'm just going to put the count here onto g7, and then this is direct check, and remember that this wolf covered the e7 square, so that would be checkmate. And if you want to put the king, for example, on e6, this is even worse, because I can just put the wolf on f4. And here this is checkmate. This attacks this square, the wolf here defends this square is defended by the count, this square is defended by a pawn and the count, this square is defended by this wolf, remember it is now here, and this square is defended by the banshee. So this is just checkmate, there's nothing you can do. So here I'm pretty sad that I can't show you this thing, but even if you promote to tomb, this is already winning, because by taking here you threat to go to f6, and this is checkmate. So the only way to survive is to put the bishop. Okay, let me go here, and after this you have to put the bishop to a4. Because the idea is that you give a breathing room to the king. At some point, if you can play this, you'll be safe. But you don't have any time to be safe, because count to f6 goes with check and you don't have ways. So you have to put the king to d7, then count to f7 check goes, you have two ways. If you decide to put the king here, of course this is completely losing, because this is just check. And if you take with the bishop here, then I'm going to take, and this is checkmate. So this is not possible. So this is why in the game with the computer, I say, in the post analysis with the computer, it would likely go on c6, but this is not over because ghoul to d5 happens with check. And here you have to be very careful of where you move. If you think that moving here would be fine with king to c5, this is just completely losing, because I'm going to go with b4 check, and then you have only one square to go to c6, and then I'm going to use my wolf, take on c3, then take the bishop, and this is checkmate. I'm just covering this square, this square, this square, this square, like everything is perfect. Incredible. So of course you can do that. So you have first to go to b6, but this is where I would use immediately the wolf to take on a4 with check. Here you don't have another square, you have to go to a5, this is forced. And then I will use some kind of other pieces to get. You can try to get an attraction here with b4, but you don't have enough pieces to checkmate the king. So you have to take your own ghoul with the count with check. And here basically there's only one stuff you can do. You can take this knight, but that doesn't help because you would get count to c5 checkmate. Or you can decide just to block the check with c5. Also, I don't precise, but if you want to before same move happens. So c5 blocks the check, and maybe at some point you will try to go here if any piece besides this or this move. But of course this is not allowed because I use b4 this time. You can't capture it here because this is direct check to the king. So you have to take with the king, you don't have any choice. Again, if you decide to take the wolf, this is the same problem. You're going to be checkmated with the count to b3. So taking on b4 is the best. And here count to c4 is played, king goes to a5, and then count to b5 is checkmate. But you see that this is a pretty long line. Honestly, I really prefer the line where you promote to wolf and this is made into. This is actually what happened in the chess club, and my opponent was very amazed as one or two friends which were watching this. Like, technically after this, you promote to the wolf with check and this is over. So I really hope that you like this game with the vampires. Vampires are so cool when you know how to master them. You just have to be very careful and very slow in the thing. And if your opponent's not too much aggressive, you will be able to completely destroy it. So this is the end of this game. We're going to see each other next time for another game featuring another faction. See you then. Bye.